Secret Wars. What's Dr. Doom's mission, Secret Shield? Ah, Zap Captain America with my Doom Roller.
Dr. Doom, Doom Roller, Turbo Cycle, and Captain America each sold separately. Batteries not included.
Let's roll. Doom Roller? That Ferris wheel can't stop the Turbo Cycle. Change course, Doom Roller. Now, Turbo Cycle, you're doomed.
Doom Roller and Turbo Cycle vehicles from the Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars collection, each sold separately. Action figures also sold separately. New from Mattel.
Greetings all, and welcome to another episode of Unrepentant Geeking, the show where a geek can be a geek. As always, I'm your host, Shaun, and today we're going to be going full-blown comic book nerd. The best kind of nerd. Except for gaming nerds, and music nerds, and movie nerds, and TV nerds. You know what? All nerds are great. Let's just say all nerds are great. Agreed? Agreed? Agreed. Seriously though, yeah, I'm going to be taking a look specifically at the big Secret Wars event. I plan to review every issue, every tie-in that came out in May connected to Marvel's latest grand opus. Now, I know originally a while back I said the next episode of the show was going to be taking a look at Flash and Jane the Virgin, and I still intend to do that, but due to my involvement with Phoenix Comic-Con and hosting something like 8 or 9 panels and all that stuff, I had to delay stuff there. And at this point, we're so close to the end of iZombie, just one more episode to go as I'm recording this, I decided to just wait and do a grand CW blowout. So look for that, hopefully episode 26 or 27, certainly no later than that. Those reviews are still coming, iZombie reviews still coming, gonna be a fun episode. But for now, let's get to today's main event, Secret Wars. The multiverse was destroyed. The heroes of Earth 616 and Earth 1610 were powerless to save it. Now, all that remains is Battleworld, a massive patchwork planet composed of the fragments of worlds that no longer exist, maintained by the iron will of its god and master, Victor Von Doom. It is a world where God is Doom. Each region of Battleworld is a domain unto itself, and the stories of the battles for domination and control within this world are known as the Secret Wars. Yeah, so that's the setup. Oh god, yes, that is basically somewhat of a variation of the text that is opening most of the tie-in books and the main book for Marvel's Secret Wars, their big 2015 summer event, and arguably the biggest event they've ever done, potentially. If you don't follow Marvel Comics, if you just know them from the movies, basically, here's what you need to know. The Marvel Universe used to be what we like to call a multiverse. If you're not familiar with the concept, that means that there's a multitude of timelines and alternate realities where all sorts of crazy things could happen. Imagine a world where Uncle Ben never died. Imagine a world where the heroes of the Marvel Universe operated in medieval times. Imagine a world where World War II was fought in outer space. And yes, that sounds incredibly random, but it totally actually happened in a what if, and it was incredibly random. Comics, as the great sage Linkara loves to say, are weird. And God bless him for that. So, basically, the Marvel Universe is a multiverse. Or, it was. Bad things started happening. Worlds started colliding. Universes began to be destroyed. And eventually, it just came down to 2 universes. The Marvel Universe we all know and love, and the Ultimate Universe, i.e., the home to an alternate version of our favorite characters that's been in existence for, give or take, 15 years, and has especially produced one of the greatest books of all time, Ultimate Spider-Man. And yes, Brian Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man in all its different incarnations is unquestionably one of the greatest superhero comics, just one of the greatest comics, period, ever produced, and I will totally get into a knife fight with you over that fact. Please note, I will not actually get into a knife fight with you, but I like to say it because it makes me sound cooler. I probably should have left that last bit out. Oh well. So, yeah, 2 universes were left, and they collided, and it was up to the heroes of the Marvel Universe and the Ultimate Universe to save the day. And as I just stated, they utterly failed. Existence ended. Except tiny little bits still remained. And thanks to the efforts of one Victor Von Doom and one Dr. Stephen Strange, they were able to pull together the remains, the last shards of existence, and create a new world. And that world is Battle World. And it is the home to all sorts of craziness. Basically, it is, as the description said, a patchwork planet. And it is made up of alternate realities. So we have one of the domains of Battleworld, for instance, is based off the 90, seems fairly similar to that classic 92 X-Men cartoon. Another recalls, say, I don't know, the big event Inferno from back in the 80s when demons invaded New York and the Marvel heroes eventually drove them all off, only in this world, they didn't. And so on and so forth. Lots of different worlds, lots of different possibilities, but all under the control of Doom. None of these worlds realize that this isn't the way things have always been. They believe Doom created everything. They believe life has always been this way. They believe Battleworld has always existed. They don't remember the worlds that were before. And they don't remember a time when Doom's word was not law. I'm sorry, this whole setup with Dr. Doom being God of Battleworld just immediately reminds me of the opening from Samurai Jack, where the late, great Mako would always intone that wonderful opening. I sent him to the future, where Aku's word is law, or something along that lines. And hopefully what I did just now wasn't, offensive. If it was, I'm sorry, that was not my intent. I was just trying to do an impression of a specific man. Anyways, so yeah, Doom is the ruler of Battleworld, and Battleworld itself is kind of like, well, honestly, even though I'm not overly fond of the series myself, it would be to say Battleworld is like Game of Thrones, like Westeros and Game of Thrones on steroids. You see, each realm in Battleworld has a ruler, usually referred to as the Baron, but often other times known as a king or queen or whatever. Sometimes president. The point is, Doom appoints somebody to be in charge of that domain and to enforce the rules that Doom has set out. One of the big rules is domains are not supposed to cross over. The barons, the rulers of a domain, can travel around to other places in a limited fashion, and they're allowed to interact with Dr. Doom and his chief sheriff, Dr. Strange. Well, actually, he's just Stephen Strange. I guess the sheriff doesn't need to be doctor as well. But anyways, basically, the average everyday citizenry that makes up all these worlds, many of them are only vaguely even aware that other worlds exist, and none of them are allowed to interact. And that's one of the big rules. And if you break the rules in Battleworld, then you gotta face the Thors. That's right. In Battleworld, there is a police force made up entirely of Thors. And yeah, not just the blonde-haired varieties. We're talking Beta Ray Bill. We're talking Storm Thor. We're talking Frog Thor. We're talking Groot Thor. Yes, Groot Thor. So the Thors are the police force of Battleworld, and believe you me, they are not afraid to bring down the thunder in the name of the law. So, rulers, police force, but because things aren't perfect, sometimes realms go to war. Sometimes realms are in conflict. Sometimes rulers are killed. Sometimes new people take over. This is the way of it in Battleworld. And that is the setup for Secret Wars. The first issue of Secret Wars basically shows us the last days of the Marvel Universe, and then issue 2, boom, we're straight into Battleworld. Basically, issue 1, we see everybody fail. Issue 2, we start picking up the pieces. Issue 3 is technically in June, and yes, while I have read it, I'm not going to get too much into it because I want to give people a chance to get caught up. What I will say is issue 3 is even better than issues 1 and 2, and issues 1 and 2 were great. And yeah, I am pretty much all in on Secret Wars. I was even before it began. You have to understand, alternate realities and crossovers and things like this, where you're bringing together different versions of different characters and all that stuff, that is like catnip to me. That is, that is like honey to my fly. Ew, that's kind of gross. Anyways, so I was really excited for Secret Wars from the word go. And I am happy to report that so far, it is more than living up to my expectations. We're only 3 issues in, and this is going to be an 8-issue mini, so I don't want to proclaim final judgment yet, but I will say that for me at least, if the quality of Secret Wars maintains across the remaining 5 issues that it's held in the first 3, we're looking at one of the greatest comic book events in history. Just one of the best. Just the artwork, the writing, it's all terrific. I've already gone in depth on my thoughts on the first 2 issues of Secret Wars in episodes of Rambling, so I'm not going to talk too much more about the main event today. I will go more into later issues in later episodes of Unrepentant Geeking, but for now, yeah, basically, if you're not reading the first 2 issues, if you haven't read the first 3 issues of Secret Wars, and you like superhero comics at all, or you like the characters from the Marvel Universe, or you like these kind of grand, big events, but also events that have plenty of room for the smaller human elements, because part of what's really impressed me, Hickman always does the big ideas great, but I will admit, sometimes he's not always great with the characterization. He can come off a little cold, but that is not an issue in Secret Wars. He's doing just some of the best writing of his career, and it's being matched by Asad Ribic, who's doing some of the best artwork of his career. And if you know Asad Ribic, you know that's saying something. So, you can go out right now, buy those 3 issues, and I guarantee you don't need to read a single tie-in. Now, it would help, certainly, if you could get your hands on issue 0. I think Secret Wars 0, which is basically a 16-page recap. I'll get into what it's recapping in a second. It's, I believe, on Comixology, and I'm sure a lot of comic stores still have it, because, you get tons of them from Free Comic Book Day. It certainly helps. And you have to understand, Secret Wars is the culminations of 10 years worth of stories from Jonathan Hickman in the Marvel Universe. So, yeah, there is some baggage there. There's a lot of backstory that you can read. He's basically spent the last, 8 months alone doing a direct lead-in prelude called Time Runs Out into Secret Wars, showing, just building up to the final incursion in the beginning of Secret Wars. But all that stuff isn't really completely necessary. I will say that I found Secret Wars about as accessible as you can hope to find a book that, again, is the culmination of 10 years worth of stories. Hickman does a more or less good job catching you up. You might be a little lost in the first issue, but a lot of that stuff falls away in importance once you get to the end, and once we get on Battleworld, and he definitely does a deft job of setting up Battleworld. So you don't have to read a single tie-in, and as you would expect from an event this size, there are plenty of tie-ins. So you don't have to read them. You could just enjoy Secret Wars on its own. But if, like me, as you're going through the main book and you're seeing these glimpses of the realms that make the domains that make up Battleworld, and you're going, ooh, I wonder what's that about? Ooh, what's that about? Ooh. And you're going to be like, I'd love to see a story about that. Good news. They're out there. So that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the episode. I'm going to review every single tie-in that came out connected to Secret Wars in May. And then, later on, I'm going to do this for each month of the event. I'm going to review all of Secret Wars. Now, obviously, since it's taken me 12 and a half minutes just to get to the point where we are now, I am not going to be going too in-depth here. I'm going to tell you if I thought the book was good or not, and I'm also going to tell you whether or not I think you should read it in terms of the importance of the overall Secret Wars storyline and all that. So, we're going to see. I'm kind of going into this unscripted, a bit like this was an episode of Ramblings, just because I think it'll be a bit more fun just to cover that much all at once. So this is just going to try and be rapid fire. Okay, to begin with, all the Secret Wars tie-in books come in basically 3 flavors. You have Last Days, Battle World, and War Zones. I'll get to the latter 2 in a minute, but we're going to begin our reviews by taking a look at the 3 Last Days books that came out in May. And essentially, I'm just going to review all 3 at once, because I pretty much have the same thing to say about all of them. Those books are Captain America and the Mighty Avengers by Al Ewing and Luke Ross, Loki, Agent of Asgard by Al Ewing and Lee Garrett, and Magneto by Cullen Bunn and Javi Fernandez. Essentially, these are all really good books, but they're also just continuations of what's been going on in the ongoing titles. I mean, if you don't know, the Last Day books are essentially taking a look at the final hours of the Marvel Universe before the end. So, and so the Last Day books, especially in this case, are essentially just issues of the ongoing series. So you have Cap and the Mighty Avengers is issue 8. Loki is issue 14. Magneto is issue 18. And they're going to continue on for several issues. So, while these are very good books, that's because all 3 books have been very good on their own. If you haven't already been reading any of these 3 books, these are not exactly great jumping on points. I mean, it looks pretty clear that, especially in the case of these 3 titles, this is probably it for them. Once they reach the end of Last Days, they're probably not getting relaunched. Or if they are, they won't be relaunched with the same teams or in any ways recognizable. I mean, obviously there will be more Avengers titles, but I think this particular incarnation of it, which is very unique from the rest of the books, I'm not sure that'll still be around. If it is, it's going to have to make some changes just based on what we have seen of what the post-Secret Wars world is like. And Loki, this definitely feels like a climax, and Magneto is a low seller. So all 3 of these feel like they're conclusions to the current run. And as such, they're not exactly great jumping on points. Like I said, all 3 of these books are great. If you haven't been reading them and you have the money, by all means, I would go back, get all the issues, give these books a try. These are just fun, underrated titles. But because of all that, and because the Last Day books, so far at least, don't seem to have a ton of relevance to what's going on in the main storyline. That will change later on. There are at least a couple of books that seem like they may be important, but in terms of these 3 books specifically, they have nothing to do really with the larger storyline. And because of that, they are eminently skippable. But they are still very good titles, just to be clear. Okay, so I said there were 2 other flavors of tie-ins, and that is Battleworld and Warzone. In theory, Battleworld books are supposed to tell the story of a single realm or a single domain, however you want to call it. I'm going to go back and forth in those names, I'm sure, throughout the rest of this review. Anyways, a single domain in Battleworld, and just, a story of it, of characters in it, what have you. And some may be directly tied into the ongoing storyline, others are just standalone tales. Then, the Warzone books are supposedly supposed to be about multiple domains coming into conflict with each other, and they're also supposed to be mini-events onto themselves. That's the terminology Marvel writers and creators have used several times about these books, the idea that these could easily just be standalone things onto themselves, but that's how big Secret Wars is. And finally, they're also supposed to be the building blocks of the new Marvel Universe that's coming after Secret Wars. In practice, there's not always a lot of difference between what seems to mark a Battleworld book and a Warzone book, because there are Warzone titles, as we will get to, that more or less tell the tale of a single domain, or certainly seem to. So, and there are, meanwhile, Battleworld books that appear to involve multiple realms. So, yeah, it's all a little messy. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. Let's just dig into the books themselves. I will go by set of tie-in just for simplicity's sake. So, okay, so first of all, we have Ultimate End. This is by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley, and if those 2 creators sound familiar, that's because they are none other than the men who first gave us the Ultimate Universe. This is the writing and artist team behind Ultimate Spider-Man's initial run. I think they went on for 100 plus issues. One of the most classic runs in all of comics. One of the most classic titles. That's my opinion, that Brian Bendis' Ultimate Spider-Man in all its different incarnations is just one of the most important and just one of the best written superhero books ever. And history will bear this out, I'm sure. So, yeah. This is supposed to be the end of the Ultimate Universe. By all accounts, it's not coming back after Secret Wars. And frankly, this has been a long time coming. There have been several seemingly, this is the end events. But the universe has kept squeaking on by, but it's basically become a vestigial tale. Back in the day, it was where we were getting creators doing fresh new takes on characters, and it was meant to be a creator-driven imprint, but a lot of the methodology of Ultimate books and the Marvel Knight books, which was another similar imprint, have become a standard in the mainline Marvel universe. And so, as that's going on, and as the continuity of the Ultimate Universe has become more and more convoluted, because that was supposed to be the other thing, it was supposed to be an easily accessible version of the Marvel Universe for newcomers. Basically, the Ultimate Universe has really lost a lot of its purpose, and it's gotten mired down in a lot of really bad stories over the years. Thank you, Jeff Loeb. So this is supposed to be the end. It's complicated a bit by the fact that this is actually, like I said, a Battle World title. So this is set on Battle World, which means the version of the Ultimate Universe we get in this book is not exactly the one we've known all these years. And supposedly the idea is that it and the surviving version of the the mainline Marvel Universe that's on Battle World are now occupying the same space, and they're kind of alternating. Honestly, this is a bit of a weird first issue. It's kind of oblique. It's definitely a bit hard to get into. It's not even clear till the end that this is definitely a Battle World book. I strongly suspect this is going to read a lot better in trade, which is not something you're unused to hearing with a Bendis book. And I mean, it certainly seems like it's going to be an important title, and if you're a fan of Ultimate, I mean, it's well written and well drawn up in and of itself, as you would expect from this creative team. But this first issue's off to a bit of a rough start. I don't think I can really make a pronouncement on this series until I get to at least issue 2. So I might say, for now, hold off. Unless you're really into this creative team and you really want to see this concept, hold off for now. Okay, next up we have Master of Kung Fu, written by Hayden Blackman, art by, oh my lord, I'm going to butcher this name and I'm so sorry, Dalibor Taljic. This is a really fun title. Now, in terms of the larger Secret Wars events, this is one of those tie-ins which is just completely off on its own. Has no real connection to the larger story, just this standalone tale. Honestly, you could have done this as a What If or an Elseworlds standalone mini quite easily, but it is set on Battle World. There are a few mentions to Doom and all that, but you don't need to read Secret Wars to enjoy this, and you don't need to read this to enjoy Secret Wars. But man, you should still read this all the same, because it really is shaping up to be a fun title. The basic setup is, take the Marvel Universe, take all the heroes and villains, and then view them through the lens of classic martial arts films, with all the tropes that entails. So every version of the Marvel character of a Marvel character in this book is a kung fu fighter, and so you get the Spider Clan, and you get all sorts of just wonderful interpretations of classic characters. So you get like a bunch of the mutants are actually now the outcast martial arts clan, and the lead of the book is, of course, Shang-Chi. If you don't know, he's the character who's long been associated with the title Master of Kung Fu, and Hayden Blackman just does a really good job of kind of capturing the feel of an old school style martial arts film while throwing in some of that nice Marvel twist. Delicious, just delicious. Again, not required reading by any means in terms of the larger crossover, but I'm not bothered by that at all. I give this a really strong recommendation for those just looking for a fun standalone tale. Now, the next book, on the other hand, it seems like it could end up becoming required reading for the larger crossover. It is Inhumans Atlan Rising from normal Inhumans writer Charles Soule, along with art by John Timms. This is basically an alternate version of the Inhumans, where Medusa, if you don't know, she of the red hair that she can control and is very dangerous and deadly when she puts her mind to it. Medusa in this version of the Inhumans has always been queen, and always been leader of them, and there is no Black Bolt. Well, actually, there is a Black Bolt, but he's not married to her. He is running something called the Quiet Room, and I really don't want to say more than that, because a big part of this book is intrigue and machinations. I mean, I compared the setup to Secret Wars. There feels like there's some overlapping concepts with something like Game of Thrones, but this is the book that really has most that feeling. This is a book filled with political intrigue and scheming. I mean, not to say there isn't action, not to say there isn't stuff going on, but this is a more thoughtful tie-in. And the basic setup that Lord Doom, God Doom, charges Medusa with finding rebels on Battle World who threaten, or at least are trying to threaten, his reign. So that's basically the driving plot, and of course the leader of these rebels is none other than Black Bolt. And so we've got this classic kind of setup, and clearly they're going to meet and most likely have the chemistry that they've long had in the main title. And so this seems like it could become a very important book, both in terms of the larger, later post-Secret Wars, perhaps, and in terms of Secret Wars itself. There are references to a bunch of other realms, which again is why I said the whole realm thing, the whole battle world war zone thing isn't really an exact science, clearly. But regardless, this is a good book. I mean, if you haven't been reading the Inhumans, the mainline Inhumans book, you've been missing out on a really good title. Soul really gets these characters, and that the same is true for this alternate version of them, and there's some lovely tweaks and twists for longtime readers of the characters, for readers of the ongoing series, but at the same time, you don't have to have been reading his Inhumans run to enjoy this. If you've been curious about the Inhumans, this is not a bad way to kind of get your feet wet with the characters. I mean, it's not them in their regular version, and it's clearly not the version that's going to be sticking around in Secret Wars in Uncanny Inhumans, but still, it does give you a flavor of what these characters and their world is like. And then, finally, in terms of Battle World, well, technically these two books don't really fall under either. Anyways, we have two more books before we get to the Warzone books. That is Secret Wars Battle World and Secret Wars Journal. And these are two anthology titles which have a whole variety of writers and artists. And of the two of them, Battle World is easily the weaker title. This is, of all the tie-ins, probably the most skippable tie-in, I think, in the entire crossover. I mean, the first story is kind of fun. Basically, we get a version of the Punisher from a classic issue of What If, where Wolverine becomes a vampire, he turns a whole bunch of the X-Men and heroes into vampires, invades New York, and kills a lot of the heroes, including Doctor Strange, at which point the spirit of Doctor Strange lends his power to the only remaining surviving hero, the Punisher. And so this is basically that character now running around in Battle World, and he kind of sort of remembers what happened beforehand. He knows that things weren't always this way, and he knows that Doom is not a guy to be trusted, and just being frank, he can't serve under Doom, basically, not willingly. And so he's kind of on the run, and he's going to get multiple stories in Battle World, and his story is fun, but not exactly, great. The second story in Battle World #1 is just kind of terrible. It involves a version of MODOK who already has his own standalone mini in this, as we will get to, so that makes this extra redundant. The story itself is just a version of MODOK summoning versions of the Marvel heroes who are also MODOK. This joke's been done before, and it's been done a lot better. The story's just not very good. The art is very subpar, I'm afraid to say. Basically, at least in terms of issue 1, Battle World is real skippable. Secret Wars Journal, on the other hand, is a lot stronger. The main story, or at least the first story, which again is another multi-parter seemingly, focuses on a version of Kate Bishop. She is the younger female Hawkeye who first showed up in Young Avengers and has been used to such good effect by Matt Fraction in his Hawkeye run. It's basically a version of her. It's a version of her existing in Marvel's medieval version of the story Marvel's medieval version of the Marvel Universe that Neil Gaiman helped create. And so the idea is that she's basically, as appropriate for a character who uses a bow and arrow, she's a Robin Hood-like figure who's rebelling specifically against Doom, and it's just a neat kind of concept. The second story, meanwhile, gives us an ancient Egyptian version of the Marvel Universe. Everybody exists in ancient Egypt, and mutants, of course, are slaves, and we get to see an uprising of mutants. And that's also a good story. So if you only buy one anthology title in this whole thing, so far at least, Secret Wars Journal is the one to buy. Okay, that's going to take us now to the Warzone titles. And we begin with A-Force #1, which comes to us from writers G. Willow Wilson and Marguerite Bennett, and art by George Molina, and I love this book. I absolutely love this book. The basic setup is, this is set in the domain of Arcadia, which is this kind of paradise-like little island. And I wonder if that is a reference, an oblique reference to Wonder Woman. I mean, it's not called Paradise Island, but it's this island where everything is beautiful and gorgeous, and it's off on the side of Battle World, so it's kind of off on its own, and it's ruled by none other than Jennifer Walters, aka She-Hulk, one of my absolute favorite favorite Marvel characters. She's easily in my top 5 Marvel characters. I love She-Hulk, and this is a great take on it, as you would expect from the writer who helped give us Miss Marvel and other similar great titles. This is a very strong book. The setup is that on Arcadia, the version of the Avengers who protects everything is composed entirely of women. And you get some really great takes on some familiar faces. For example, in the book, we get a version of Nico Minro of Runaways and America Chavez of Young Avengers, where in this version they're basically adopted sisters being raised by none other than Loki. But not just any version of Loki, it's the female version of Loki. And I really, in a single issue, the writers really create this whole relationship and version of two of Marvel's best characters. And it's just a joy to read. And this book, look, there's a lot of great art in the Secret Wars titles. I'm going to keep saying that probably throughout all these reviews. These are some beautiful, beautiful books in general. But this is one of the best. This is easily just one of the best looking titles Marvel's putting out right now, period. I do not have enough praise for the work that George Molina is doing. He really he presents beautiful vistas, and he presents, pulse-pounding action and drama. He's just doing it all. So I cannot recommend this book enough. This is, by all accounts, a book that's going to continue after Secret Wars in some version or form. So here's the chance to get on the ground floor for one of the best books right now that Marvel is publishing. So absolutely read A-Force. Please read A-Force. Next up, we have Deadpool's Secret Wars by Cullen Bunn as a writer and Matteo Loli as on art. First of all, this book is completely irrelevant to the current Secret Wars book because it's not actually about the current Secret Wars storyline at all. The idea is that the original Secret Wars, the one back in 1984, one of the best stories Marvel ever did. Okay, maybe not the best, but one of my... No, you know what? I'm going to stick by that. I love the original Secret Wars. It's a book with a surprising amount of nuance, creativity. It was the first true comic book event of its kind. So for good or for ill, all that came after owe a debt to this title. I love the original Secret Wars, and the idea is inserting everybody's favorite merc of a mouth into this storyline, because technically the character of Deadpool was running around at this point, thanks to the, shortened timeline of comic book law. Point is, Deadpool was technically around, it's just in the real world he didn't exist yet, so he couldn't participate in Secret Wars, but when has that ever stopped Deadpool? So, yeah, it's basically Cullen Bunn revisiting the classic that started it all, and just having so much fun. He nails Deadpool's voice, of course, but he also really gets the version of the Marvel characters who showed up in Secret Wars. Because, this was a distinct period, as you would expect, in the universe. And so characters like the X-Men and the Avengers were going under certain... this was the time when Rhodey was first became Iron Man, took over for Cap. Took over for Tony. Wow, sorry. And this was when we got introduced to Monica as Captain Marvel, a character I really love as well. And so it's really neat seeing Deadpool inserted to all this. It has nothing to do with the current event. You can absolutely skip it unless you enjoy fun. Do you like fun? Okay then. You should be reading Deadpool's Secret Wars for people who don't hate fun. Okay. Sorry, I guess a little bit of Deadpool got into me, which is just... Alright. Next up, we have Planet Hulk from Sam Humphries and Mark Lamming. And this is basically just a rollicking adventure. The setup is that a version of Captain America who's been sent to the gladiatorial arenas of Battleworld, run of course by Arcade, because who else? Who is also warbound. That's kind of like a familial relationship. It's like, it's people who team up, who become warriors together. It's a concept from the original Planet Hulk that this is named after. Anyways, he's teamed up with everybody's favorite Red Tyrannosaur, Devil Dinosaur. And if you don't know who Devil Dinosaur is, you have not lived a fulfilled life. He is this terrific Jack Kirby creation, depending on which version you're talking about, either a prehistoric or from an alternate universe, it all gets kind of messy. What matters is, he's a big giant red Tyrannosaurus Rex who kicks lots of ass. And so he and Cap are partners, and yeah, they get charged by none other than Doom himself to go into the most dangerous, well, one of the most dangerous realms on Battleworld, Greenland. This is a domain where an accident with Bruce Banner and Amadeus Cho caused everybody to become Hulks. Yeah, everybody. Everybody. So you have thousands of green, red, gray, blue, whatever Hulks running around, and as tends to happen with Hulks, they're not really in a good mood. They're all ruled by the mysterious Red King, and that's kind of a problem because the Red King ain't towing the line. And even the Thors can't do anything about it, so... Yep, you got it. Captain America and Devil Dinosaur charged to go into Greenland and kill the Red King. This was the book that a lot of people were looking forward to heading into Secret Wars. The concept just seemed completely gloriously wonky in that way you only get with superhero comic books. And yeah, the book itself more than lives up to it. You get all sorts of crazy shenanigans in this first issue with the promise of more to come. This is an extremely well-written, well-drawn book. High recommendation. It has minimal connection to the larger storyline. I doubt it's going to have much impact on Secret Wars itself. But as you may be coming to tell, I don't really care about that. I care, are these good reads in and of themselves? And by that criteria, yeah, Planet Hulk is absolutely something you should be reading. Then we have Spider-Verse #1 from Mike Costa and Andre Arau. Yeah, this is another skip book. I mean, look, this is sort of a continuation of the Spider-Man event that occurred earlier in the year, Spider-Verse, where every version of Spider-Man from across the multiverse came together to fight a group of bad guys. It's a decent story. Not my favorite crossover, even though you'd think it's right in my wheelhouse, because again, I love alternate universes, I love crossovers, but regardless, this version, the idea is there no longer is a multiverse, so how do you get Spider-Verse? Well, a bunch of characters from that, including everybody's favorite Spider-Gwen, basically find themselves in a domain ruled by none other than Norman Osborn, which isn't good if you happen to be a spider person. And they're all kind of messed up. They have memory loss brought about by Secret Wars, and they know something's not right, and they get drawn together. I don't know. There's just... the concept is okay, but somehow the execution's just lacking. Maybe it'll get better as we go along. I hope it does, but it's not terrible, but it's also not great. And frankly, there's so many other titles. I have to give this one a recommendation of skip, or at very least, wait for trade. The next book is one you absolutely should not wait, and you cannot skip, and it may be my favorite of all the Secret Wars tie-ins. It's certainly up there so far, and that is Infinity Gauntlet by Gary Dungan and Dustin Weaver writing, and Dustin Weaver on art. This book, oh my god, this book, in my opinion, has the best art of the entire Secret Wars event, and that's including the main book, and I do not say that lightly, but this is Dustin Weaver. If you have not seen the amazing design work and character work and just the amazing, if you haven't been seeing those preview pages and designs that he's been releasing online for this book, this Infinity Gauntlet is just gorgeous, gorgeous. And thankfully, it's got writing to match. The basic setup is we're in a domain where bad things have happened, and basically the world it's a domain that was invaded, it looks like, by the bugs of the Annihilus wave from the negative zone. Basically giant cannibal bugs, well, not cannibal, meat-eating bugs, and they've reduced civilization in this domain to almost nothing. We follow a family of survivors, including our lead, a young African-American teen who's just this great character, and I absolutely hope she's sticking around post-Secret Wars. The idea is that her mother went off to become a Nova when the bug invasion first started, and they haven't seen her since, and so now it's just her younger sister, her father, and her grandpa, and they're struggling to survive and all that, and it's a really neat concept. Duggan's writing, he just really brings these characters to life. By the end of this first issue, you really already come to care for these new characters. And meanwhile, there's another familiar face running around in the background who I won't say, but if you know anything about Infinity Gauntlet, it won't surprise you that he's around. And the idea is, I think this is the real version of this character, in which case that's going to be a pretty big deal it could be a really big deal in terms of the larger Secret Wars storyline. So it looks like this book could be important on that level, but even if it isn't, this is just a great book. This is two creators doing what they do best, and you should be reading Infinity Gauntlet. Next up, we have Inferno from Dennis Hopeless and Javier Guerin. Now, these Secret Wars books tend to come in a number of beyond the subheading. We tend to be getting three types of Secret Wars books. We get the one where you take a past event like Infinity Gauntlet and you reinterpret it through this new lens. Then you got the book which kind of is just this crazy concept like the upcoming Wild West book or A-Force. It's not necessarily based off anything directly, but it's just a new concept. And then you have what I like to call the what-if books. These are the ones where, yes, they may be based on past events, but they're also letting us see what might have happened if things had gone a little differently. And that is the setup for Inferno. If you don't know, Inferno was a classic, perhaps in quotation marks, crossover event in Marvel. The idea is that the demons of the Marvel Universe invaded New York and turned everything to hell, literally. And it was primarily through a couple of X-Men characters. They were the focus, and the heroes eventually fought it off and restored New York back to normal. Well, in the Inferno Secret Wars book, that didn't happen. The demons won, and the remains of humanity have escaped off to the side, and they're now led by Cyclops, and they're protected by the X-Men. And we focus particularly on Colossus, whose sister was at the heart of the Inferno event. And in this book, he leads a ragtag team of various X-Men characters back into demon-possessed New York to try and rescue his sister. So it's a suicide mission kind of thing. This is a fun book. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's got a lot of ties to the larger Secret Wars storyline, although in issue 2 of Secret Wars there are references to this particular domain, so maybe not. But it's a fun read. Hopeless, who's writing a number of books for Marvel and a number of books for this event, he has a really good grasp on voice. He gives us some familiar faces, and they feel true to the versions of who they were at the time of the event, but he also gives them some twists because things have continued on in several years after they all failed. This is just a fun book. It's not required reading in terms of the crossover like a number of titles I've already reviewed, but if you're just looking for a good read, Inferno will absolutely fit the bill. So next we have MODOK Assassin. This comes from Chris Yost and Amilcar Pina. This book is wonky. Basically, it's set in the domain of Killville, where everything is for hire, and particularly life is cheap. And we focus on Killville's greatest warrior, greatest killer, MODOK, who is, if you don't know, the guy with he's the giant head with the little arms and legs, who flies around. He's a fun character, especially when used correctly, and this, unlike that Battleworld first issue, this is how you use the character. This is just, if you're looking for a kind of crazy, subversive piece of nonsense, if you're looking for some ultra-violence, for some, just characters going nuts, this is the book for you. This is a book that opens with MODOK taking on Bullseye, and it's a fun read. It's it's very clearly not going to be essential in terms, I know, there I go again, but yes, it's not going to be essential in terms of the larger Secret Wars storyline, but it's a good read. There's a number of books, that's just what I could say. If you like the concept, the art is very unique, very, very different from your standard house style of Marvel, whatever that might be, and, Pina's just doing some great stuff there. If you're looking for a Secret Wars tie-in that goes off the beaten track, this is the one for you. Then we have Old Man Logan from none other than Brian Michael Bendis himself, with art by Andrea Sorrentino. This is a sort of continuation of the Mark Millar, prestige miniseries, I guess you'd say, which follows a version of Wolverine who's an old man in the future, and after really bad things went down, he retired from being Wolverine. It's in a post-apocalyptic dystopian future. You know, the bad guys have won. They've taken over. The world's gone to hell. And then in the book, it's in the original Old Man Logan, Wolverine gets dragged into one last mission, you know, Unforgiven style. And without going into too many details, by the end of the book, he decides he's got to get back into the game, get back into the world. And this ticks up from that. Now, if you don't know, Old Man Logan, it looks like, is going to be sticking around as both a character and probably as a series post-Secret Wars. So it looks like this is how they're bringing back Wolverine without bringing back Wolverine. They're bringing in Old Man Logan version of him into the mainline Marvel Universe, or at least that's what appears to be happening. And if that's the case, I actually think that's a really clever way of bringing the character back. I was iffy on Old Man Logan. Some people really loved it. I'm not a big Mark Millar fan, and I found Old Man Logan suffered from a lot of his worst ticks, but the character itself has potential, and in this case, I really like what Bendis is doing with it. This is the kind of book that's right up Bendis' alley. It's focused on a single character. He's always had a strong voice in that sense, and he the idea is that Logan is still out there, you know, Old Man Logan is still out there, doing what he can do, you know, trying to restore a bit of order. And then he starts to realize things have changed and that now he's just part of this battle world thing. And clearly the book is going to be about him getting sucked into the larger story of Secret Wars. And I suspect this will be a very important book, both because of who's writing it and because of the characters sticking around and all that. So, you know, if you want to be in the pulse of Secret Wars, this first issue doesn't necessarily seem that tied into the main story, but I suspect that will change. Regardless, the art is great, the writing is great. If you like the concept of an old, bitter, crusty Wolverine going around kicking ass, you'll enjoy this title. And that brings us to Secret Wars 2099 from, of course, the one, the only, the man, the myth, Peter David, who is to the 2099 universe what Brian Michael Bendis is to the Ultimate Universe. He wrote... You know, he helped create it. He was the writer of the first book of it, Spider-Man 2099. He's one of my all-time favorite writers. On art is Will Sliney. This is a good book. Again, this is one of those titles not that directly seemingly tied in to the larger Secret Wars plot. But if you love the 2099 characters, if you love that universe, sub-universe, whatever you want to call it, if you like the Marvel 2099 setup, this is a book for you. We get to focus on the Avengers of 2099, including a female Captain America, and I love the design for her. She looks muscled and tough. She looks like a soldier. She looks like this badass woman who can just kick the living crap out of anybody who gets in her way. And the basic idea is that in the future, where it's one of those kind of cyberpunk dystopia futures where corporations rule all, and that includes the Avengers. And it's a really good read, as you would expect from Peter David. This gets my stamp of highest recommendation. It's not necessarily tied into the larger events, but it's such a good read you won't even care. And finally, for now, Where Monsters Dwell. This comes to us from, believe it or not, Garth Ennis, with art by Russ Braun. So these two have teamed up again. This is a fun book. I'm sounding like a broken record now, but I know no connection to the larger storyline. This really has no connection to the larger events of Secret Wars, but you will not care. The basic idea is World War I, I think it's a World War I pilot, gets sucked, who's living on Battleworld, doesn't even know that what's going on. He's in one of the realms where they don't really quite realize, or at least the general public don't know what's going on Secret Wars. They just think life has always been this way. Well, he's a World War I pilot. He's a classic Marvel character, actually. The Phantom Eagle, and he's a jerk. This guy is the kind of guy who just loves him and leaves him, just out for number one. He takes on the wrong kind of job to escort a woman to a place. They get caught up in a storm, and they end up on an island with dinosaurs, including having to dogfight pterodons. This book is just fun. Garth Ennis these days is a real hit or miss writer for me, but this is him. This is the Garth Ennis I love, and not coincidentally, it's the Garth Ennis where he's got some limitations and he can't just fall back on his ultraviolet, tropes and tricks. And This is a good book. Again, it's one of those ones, no connection to the larger storyline, absolutely skippable in that sense, but it just, this is rollicking. This is very, an anti-hero lead getting into all sorts of crazy shenanigans. This is a book that really embraces the potential of superhero comic books to just go crazy. And if that sounds like you're kind of crazy, by all means, give it a read. All right, and that's going to do it. Whew. Oh, I don't know about you, but I am exhausted. So next month, I'll come back and review more of the tie-ins. I will definitely be reviewing all the number ones of June connected to Secret Wars. I'll be touching upon my thoughts of the main series that have come out, and maybe a few of these that I check back in with a few of these. I'll definitely think I'll check back in with Ultimate End, just because that one was left me so uncertain. Maybe a couple others. I'm not going to review all the issues too. By the end of Secret Wars, I will give my final thoughts on all these minis, on what I thought of them. But that's going to wait until the final part of this series, I guess you would say. For now, that's going to be it. Come back next week for a new episode of Blistered Reviews, where I'll be taking a look at a number of high-profile and indie releases, including Puzzles, Dragons, and Z/Mario Edition. So, yeah, please look forward to that. Until then, for Channel Awesome and Unrepentant Geeking, I am Shaun Cronenfeld, wishing you all long days and pleasant nights. Till next time.